Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Donald tries to tighten the noose. The Treasury Department launches economic Outcast. It's Operation Outcast, trying to shut down funding to the Iranians. I don't think that's going to go as well as they hope. Reports are now saying that the Iranians have a $10 million bounty on Barron Trump, Donald Trump's youngest son's head. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court clears part of Trump's mail voting executive order for the midterms, Lance.
Well, look, I'm thankful for this. I don't know if it solves the midterms by any means, but of course, this was on Monday. They upheld, Trump's executive order restricting mail-in ballots ahead of the midterms. Look, the mail-in ballots are a major problem. Postmaster General is supposed to have a plan. I don't know if it's going to go forward. I don't know how many of these judges, including judges like Judge Indira Telwani, who's an Obama appointee, she's tried to expand the block. But, it's interesting where this is going. Sam, what do you think? I mean, do you think any of this will have an impact on the midterms? Because they've got the cheating down to a science at this point.
I think it will, except for the problem is you understand the cheating is on both sides, right?
100%.
And so will this change the game? Absolutely. Will it benefit probably Republicans over Democrats? Probably so. But it only clears part of Trump's mail-in voting thing. Okay, they paused a lower court ruling. And so it doesn't really block mail-in balloting at all. It just manipulates the details of what has to happen and how it happens and stuff like that, right?
Yes, that's correct. They're still available, but of course they want to have, the envelopes, the unique barcodes. They want approved voter lists. They want the voter rolls submitted in advance. Anybody that's not going to comply has to notify the Postmaster General 60 days in advance. But they don't want to do that. The voter rolls, we've talked about it. We talk about the dead Democrats on there and all the corruption. But let me ask you this, Sam. We've talked about this a lot. I think the only solution would be the National Emergency Act, the NEA. I think Trump would have to take the position as a wartime president, and I think we have to stop the midterms dead in their tracks. And the reason I say this, as much as I don't like that from a constitutional perspective, I think it's the only solution when you have a system that's absolutely corrupt from top to bottom. Free and fair elections are part of the compact that the American people are supposed to be guaranteed. And I think we're operating as a third world nation currently when it comes to our election systems. And I'm not sure that even steps like this about the voter rolls or the Postmaster General or anything else can solve the massive amount of cheating and corruption in our election system.
I understand what you're saying. I would go a different direction. Everybody wants to move things to the federal level as if that's going to solve something. Look, the federal level is the worst it gets. So I would move everything back to the precinct level, all the way down to the local level, and I would demand accountability. I would have everybody vote in person. I would have, I would agree with the ID. Everybody has to show ID to vote. And I would think that you need to video every vote. And I think you need to count the ballots. And I think you need to have, people who are third-party vote verifiers. So you get people that count the ballots by hand. Then you get verifiers who swear under the penalty of perjury to the count. I mean, if it's good enough for my taxes, it's good enough for the ballots. And then we would literally have local precinct by precinct reality. Neighbors would care about neighbors. Video would prove it. Third-party ballot, verifiers would watch every ballot and agree to the total before it's finished. Otherwise, you got to count again. And then they would do it under the penalty of perjury. And I think that's the only way to get it done, actually. I would go the opposite of everybody else's plan. Everybody else wants to go national. Well, then they'll go world or whatever. Bring it to the government that governs closest to the people governs best. So bring it to the local teeny level where there's a greater chance of honesty, and then force honesty by penalty of perjury and by video watching of the counts of the votes and third-party counters that are under perjury if they don't, tell the truth and level. And then that way you could recount it if you had to, because you could see the ballots all on video. People would be third-party verified. They would swear, under oath virtually because it would be under the penalty of perjury, et cetera. That's where I would go, Lance.
And I think that's a desirable plan, but I don't think in the timeline that we have between now and November 2nd, it would be something that could be executed. unless there was.
I agree. The problem is
enforcement.
with suspending the elections entirely. Those, then they'll just claim that Donald was going to lose and he was going to lose the House and the Senate. So he basically, and then they'll just basically get in power if it doesn't succeed and impeach the Donald again, and then we'll be kind of there, you know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think we would have to, along with that NAE, along with the National Emergency Act, you'd have to go into overdrive. There'd have to be a massive amount of prosecutions simultaneously of people that committed election fraud.
I agree with that.
But we haven't
Donald
seen
doesn't
any
have
of that. The truth is,
Donald doesn't have the mojo for that.
We've had this much. Well, let's face it, this administration hasn't delivered on their promises. Drain the swamp, government gangsters, none of that's been delivered. I mean, I don't see any. I've seen some transparency, but it just seems like they talk about it, they find an issue, they talk about magic money computers, or they talk about USAID, or they talk about elections, or they've got this operation that the FBI discovered. And I don't see any massive amount of
nothing
arrests.
happens
So
with it,
far,
though.
deep
It's
state
just all
arrests, I
talk.
don't feel like they're happening.
I believe they're nothing but distractions. I'll give you another example that I find very interesting. I don't know why we just did this, but while they're putting a bounty on Barron's head, while we're going to lock down supposed finance and everything else with this operation, whatever, kind of isolate Iran is the idea. But listen to this headline: United States removes Syria from the state-sponsored terrorism list. Yeah, the State Department just removed Syria from the list on Monday after a 45-day congressional, quote, review period. And they say only leaving Cuba, North Korea, and Iran as the three countries on the list now. I mean, why are we removing Syria right now? You think that's going to help things, Lance?
No, I don't think that's going to help anything. I mean, I think it's
why are we
in
doing
my
that?
personal opinion, it's ridiculous, honestly, to remove Syria. I think they are in the middle of it. But what do you think the intent is behind that? To me, it's kind of like they're trying to make some kind of nicey-nicey with Syria because they don't want Syria involved in this Iranian conflict.
Yeah, that's why they're trying to isolate
Iran.
Iran, trying to make them feel alone. The problem is that always backfires, though. We always back a guy that we say is the better guy, and then later the better guy becomes the worst guy, right?
Yeah. I don't think I would have done that. I'm not sure what the logic is behind it. I'm always curious when I see some sort of a play like that and think, okay, who pitched this to the administration? Who pitched this to Donald Trump? And what made them believe that this was a good decision? Because I don't see anything good coming out of this.
Amen. Amen. That is the quintessential problem. All right, let's skip this next break really quick because Lance has to leave a little bit early, but I've got to get this couple of more stories in before Lance leaves. So let's skip the break, Liz. But here's the deal. Donald Trump stakes his endorsement on a first-time politician that says national security is not my thing. South Carolina Republicans are voting today in a, quote, special Senate primary between Darla Graham, that's Lindsey Graham's sister. She was appointed to his seat without any prior no experience in office or anything else. She's never served. She's never... And so you got to ask, did Lindsey Graham ever like Trump? No, not at first. But then they became best friends. Was he MAGA? No, not illogically. He was an absolute war hawk and everything else. Why is Trump pushing Lindsey's sister so hard? Trump says it's, quote, personal. He held a rally with Graham and said, hey, Graham's a great dude, and because I got her into this whole thing, now I got to back her. So you got MAGA Inc. now putting a bunch of money into Darla Graham's campaign. Does she have any political experience? None in elected office. She's never ran or held elected office. She's worked with disabilities, and she ran this thing for the blind in Carolina. And as Rand Paul spoken out about her, no public comment from Rand about this at all. It's just very, very weird. And all the MAGA people are mad at Donald over this. Lance?
My take is, can I get an endorsement? I don't have any political experience. If I get Donald Trump and if I get MAGA Inc. to give me a bunch of cash, I'm ready to make it.
And if you run as a woman.
Well, look, I can run as a trans. I mean, a trans conservative. That'll be a groundbreaker. Look, when I heard about Darla Graham, I thought, well, maybe I missed something. Maybe Darla Graham's been in politics this whole time. I didn't even know Lindsey Graham had a sister. I didn't like Lindsey Graham. I think he was a warmonger. I think he was a bought and paid for politician. I didn't really like him very much. He wasn't pro Donald Trump, but of course, all of a sudden, him and Trump became, the best buddies on the entire planet. I never did understand that, but okay, whatever. Trump may know things I don't know. Possible. But Darla Graham, I thought, okay, well, maybe I missed something. Maybe Darla's been in local politics. Maybe she's always been behind Lindsey Graham. Maybe she's been working with Lindsey Graham, and I just didn't know it. So
She's
I went
got a
into
master's in government service. She runs this thing for the blind and stuff like that. She doesn't have
so
any
I
political
went
experience
and
at all.
looked her up, and I found nada, like a goose egg. And I thought, well, what's this all about? Is it because they can control her? Is it because she can be manipulated? Is it because she developed some kind of relationship during Lindsey Graham's tenure that somehow she met Donald Trump and he liked her? But this is one of those endorsements that doesn't give me a warm and fuzzy. And if we're giving out free endorsements, and if Matt Gang's giving out money, Sam and I can run on the same ticket. He can be my trans husband, and we're happy to go in there and take the check. What's sad? You don't find me attractive?
I'm just saying. I just can't. Anyway, and Rand Paul doesn't speak out about her, so he's not saying anything. Now, here's what I find interesting about this, though. She's running against a guy that's like what do you want to call this guy? A 5-term congressman or whatever else that's like part of the Freedom Caucus and everything else?
Career politician.
Career politician, but at least more conservative with at least a track record of being in the conservative caucus and everything else, better than this lady.
Yeah. I mean, she's a wild card. We don't even really know what her policies are. And when she's asked the tough question, she says, well, I don't know anything about that. That seems awkward.
But Representative Ralph Norman or whatever, this guy at least is a 5-term Freedom Caucus conservative. Now, is he perfect? No, but he's a lot more MAGA than this lady would be.
Yeah.
So Trump goes against that guy. It reminds me of removing, what's his name? From Kentucky. Just trying to think of his name right now. Massie. Thomas Massie. It's like removing Massie. What are we doing this for? Why are we driving these conservative people out? This guy may not be perfect, but he's a lot better than an unknown Lindsey Graham, partner or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's just insanity.
I want to get to this. I have some
inside
information on that whole Massie, MTG, Tucker Carlson thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
I believe Donald Trump got wind of them having these discussions behind the scenes. Joe Kent was part of it. There's a whole handful of them. And I think that's how they all got identified and pushed out. I think Donald Trump got wind of them having some meetings about that the administration wasn't delivering on what we had all voted for, what we had all supported. And they said, this isn't common sense, and we need to do something different because we're getting these continued politicians coming in and telling us what we want to hear. They get elected, like Donald Trump, and then they don't deliver. And I believe that's why the attack, that's why when he found out about what they were discussing behind the scenes, he went into overdrive to drive them out. I believe that was the intent. And of course, he was successful in doing it. That's my opinion. I'm not a huge MTG fan. I never have been, but I am a Thomas Massie fan. There's a lot of things Massie says that I agree with.
Yes. And the question becomes, is Tucker Carlson and MTG and Thomas Massie and others, are they going to put something together? Or are we going to see something in 2008 on a third-party ticket of some kind or whatever else? Because you're going to have, Rubio or J.D. Vance on one side. You're going to have AOC on the other side. And, there's a pretty good opportunity for a third party with that clown show happening. So there you go.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, although I don't necessarily like it because I think it just divides the vote. It creates confusion. But at the same time, I can understand their frustration because I have the same frustration every day that I'm researching the show. I'm always looking for that headline, 150 deep staters snatched up in the middle of the night. I never see what I voted for. And I was expecting a major draining of the swamp. I thought there would be, our political party.
I thought would have real deportations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, don't even really. Donald's not even really ahead when it comes to deportations. I know we have these flash in the pan things like, they arrested a bunch of people, but in the end of the day, he hasn't really deported more than any other presidents have. Really. Did
you see that Greg Bovino, the ex DHS employee? Do you see that he said there's over 100 million illegal immigrants in the United States?
Yes, and I don't know if that number is true or not. I have a hard time believing that number, but I do believe it's north of 40 million.
Yeah. I believe that whatever the government number that was reported, which I think they said 30 some odd million, I think that number was extremely low, and I think they lied to us. Now, whether or not Bovino's correct, but at the current rate of deportation, I don't know how many presidents' terms we would need to deport these people.
Yeah, we're not
We have
making
to
a
increase
dent
our
is the problem.
deportations like 100-fold to have any impact on what's going on here in the United States.
We're not making a dent. That's the reality check, and that's the problem. And every time they try to ratchet things up, they get their hand caught in the cookie jar and get something against them. The deep state is deeper than Donald ever imagined. Even his first term didn't give him a clue of how deep the deep state really is and what kind of latitude and money and ability they have to manipulate reality on the ground. And I think Donald Trump is stunned by that. And I think he's capitulated to saying, hey, they've already won. Therefore, let's just keep some of my guys around and let's keep my legacy good. The problem for President Trump is I don't know what his legacy is going to be anymore. You can't really say the border. I guess you could say, hey, for a while he dipped the border, crossings or whatever. But what's his legacy really going to be in the end of the day?
I know the legacy. It's a banner income year for billionaires.
Okay, there you go. Speaking of that, the Trump administration, speaking of billionaires now, the Trump administration, they've been, Trump attacks things, and you think he's where you are on a topic. But then the truth comes out. Headline, Trump administration moves to send $850 million to the United Nations. He's been talking about downsizing for a long time. But according to State Department notifications obtained by the Associated Press and others, you got $750 million for the operating budget. And then they're going to support peacekeeping operations in the Republic of the Congo and Haiti. And the planned funding comes as the UN faces a serious cash crunch. So it's a bailout. Donald saving the UN, and the proposed payments mark a substantial financial commitment to an institution that the administration has said that he wants to reform and shut down, but now he's pulling them out of the ditch, Lance.
Flip-flop, tick-tock. That seems to be the MO. They tell us what we want to hear, and then they change. I've never liked the UN. I put them in the same category as the World Health Organization and many other foundations and NGOs, even the Paris Peace Accord dynamic. I started looking at all this stuff, and I think to myself, why? I personally would have told the UN they had 30 days to move out of New York. I no longer wanted them in the United States. I'd have thrown them out.
Yeah, they're sovereignty-violating criminals, in my humble opinion, to which I'm entitled. All right, one last story, then we'll let you fly, Lance. Trump administration pours $100 million plus into government school lunches. And don't worry, it's okay because he's going to get rid of the education department. But the Trump administration announced more than $100 billion in the new school nutrition programs. But it's okay because the spending comes through the USDA, not the education department. So we're okay, Lance. It's not a contradiction there.
No concern about any grift in that program, 100. But Sam, I'm thinking we need to open up our school lunch, advisement bureau today, and we will advise them on correct nutrition for the kids. And of course, we'll designate some of our family members as the people that they have to buy the certified food from. Look, anytime you put money out, there's always some kind of a grift. I don't know. Do I think the school lunch programs need help? Absolutely. Do I think that the United States nutrition, our food supply needs help? Absolutely. But nobody wants to, give RFK Jr. the room or the support that he needs to fix our system. He's getting pushed back at every angle. I don't know. It just sounds like another opportunity for people to steal like they did with USAID, Sam.
Well, the Democrats made ketchup a health food because it had tomatoes in it, right? And then the Republicans fired back and they made salsa a health food because it had, and so they both won on that score. And so you look at this and you just go, wow, the spending comes through the, Food and Drug Administration or whatever, not the Department of Education, so there's no contradiction. I look at this and go, they're just playing games with words. They're not serious about any of it. They haven't done anything to get rid of the Education Department, have they?
No.
You say, well, Sam, they've reduced some programs. Yeah, but they've just basically cranked them up elsewhere. That's all they've done. It's a lie.
It's a lot of blah, 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 and not a lot of delivery. All right, Sam, listen, thanks for having me today, buddy. Sorry, I got to run.
All right, and I'll tell you this, when Lance gets into the NBA as a woman, then we'll let you guys know he's going to share some of his money with me so I can stay on the radio. Thanks, Lance.
You got it, brother. See you.
All right, there he goes. Lance Migliaccio doing a great job for the Big Mig. Him and George Ballantine doing a phenomenal job as always. I also got to let you know that the United States has imposed 50% tariffs on $20 million worth. Let's see. I guess it's steel, appliances, agricultural equipment, etc. Canada's response is big time. It's hard to know what's going to happen. I guess it's $20 billion. And they say Canadian products, and I guess their leader over there says they're going to fire back. But here's the interesting twist to this whole thing. We hear about the tariffs and whatever. Trump threatens 50% auto tariffs, and it's going to start, I guess, January 1st, 2027. And Ontario fires back and says, we'll cut electricity to the United States. Trump escalated the U.S.-Canada trade by threatening 50% tariffs. But anyway, Ontario's premier, I guess is how they call this guy. Guy's name is Doug Ford. He says, hey, man, we export electricity to you guys. We'll just shut it off. So, what's going to happen with all that? Don't know. But why we're in a fight with Canada right now is beyond me. Donald says Canada's been ripping us off for years. Well, who would be responsible for that? Congress? Yeah. National Guard deployment in Washington enters its second year, and they say the mission has been extended through the end of President Trump's term, and some members who are no longer on the deployment have been speaking publicly about it, going, what is going on here? Why do we have to have the National Guard there in Washington? They wouldn't deploy it during January the 6th when Donald asked them to, but now it's going to be there for the rest of his administration. What's up with all that? Very weird. And then Scott Bessent in the news. He signals a, quote, major bank sanction. It's coming this week. Bessent said the public should expect a major sanction announcement targeting an unspecified financial institution by the end of this week. But he declined to say or specify whether the United States is willing to target U.S., or I should say Chinese banks. I don't know what to say. We're not going to target Chinese banks. Then we're never going to get to the bottom of the scandal and the backing of Iran now, are we? See, so we've got our hands tied. We're hog-tied on this thing, and we pretend we're taking serious action. I think it's all a big goal game. By the way, just so you know, Salem Media went private. Salem Media goes private. An acquisition from Waterstone consummated recently, and they say it's great news because now Salem will be able to do a lot of things they were not able to do when they went public. So Salem Media completes its acquisition by the Christian Community Foundation, which does business as Waterstone, and Salem Media is now a private company. Waterstone acquired all outstanding shares of Salem Media common stock. I guess it was a 50% of the trading price, so it was a premium. And the companies say the partnership brings together two organizations with a shared commitment, listen, to Christian ministry and faithful stewardship. I find that to be great news. As a private company, Salem will continue operating its radio, digital, streaming, podcasting, and television and publishing platforms. While we're working with Waterstone for absolute increased growth, Salem CEO David Cottrell adds, this is an exciting day for Salem. Waterstone alongside us, we're positioned to invest in the future while remaining firmly committed to the mission of Christian programming. I commend them. I think this is great. Whenever you're a publicly traded company, you have hobbles on. So this private standard or private move by them is a great move because then they won't be controlled by the masses and by government regulation. They'll be free to act as true Christian leaders, and I think it's great news. Just my humble opinion to which I'm entitled. Thanks for being alongside for the ride. This show is everywhere. Spread the word and share the love. YouTube, Rumble, X, Truth Social, the list goes on and on. Spread the word and share the love, and God save our constitutional republic.